this is about first cotton in the Harappan world, very important. This is actually an invention in India, and only India and Peru in those days were producing cotton for weaving. And we don't have the cloths left at all, but we have cloth impressions on soft clay, a few like that. Recently, let me simply mention quickly that this microbead, which is 1 millimeter long and 1 millimeter in diameter, was found with some strands of material, which upon analysis in the US turned out to be silk. So the Harappans were actually harvesting wild silk, and that's interesting because it was thought that only the Chinese were the inventors of silk, but the Harappans actually were using silk. To what extent is hard to say though. Okay, so the literature is there. I have to skip this a bit. But there are many other kinds of evidences, such as ancient paintings. Here you see how in Ajanta, various kinds of clothes with dyes, with various colors. You can see here on the ladies, I don't know if you can see very clearly, are depicted. And this is what the art historians have used to recreate the story of dress in India. How did people dress 2,000 years ago? And in fact, you find that they dress in various ways. Maybe depending on the social class, we don't know. Or maybe depending on the occasion, there would be a variety of dresses. Now, dresses, of course, India was a major exporter, we know that, because the Romans testify to this. They were importing massive amount of textiles from India. Here you see on the right fragments of cotton material coming from Gujarat in the 5th century CE and found in Egyptian tombs. India exported cotton to China, silk to Indonesia, all the way to the Far East. So again, this was a very major industry. India was famed in the ancient world for its textiles and some of the very refined kinds of it. And again, the industry would attract the jealousy of the British. They wanted the British mills to sell their cloth in India. So they deliberately destroyed, we have discussed that the other day, I can skip this, they deliberately destroyed the industry. But these were some of the specialties in Indian textile. Muslin, very fine woven cotton fabric. Calico, which was also a very fine cotton kind of fabric, but it was originating from Calicut, hence the name. Chintz is a kind of printed calico, and it was so prized in Europe in the 17th and 18th century that it threatened the import from India. This was before the colonial era, threatened the European textile industry, and it was actually banned in a few countries, as you can see, France and later England. This was known as the calico craze in Europe. Hemp, flax, and jute are less glamorous kind of textile, but extremely useful and important for the economy. So you have here very quickly some photographs. This is chintz, 18th century. You can see the beauty of the printing. And of course, all of this was based on handloom. So there's a whole science of looms and many traditions which will differ according to the region, the kind of work to be done. This is a whole field in itself. Plus dyes, because you need to dye your material. So dyes extracted from vegetables like indigo, typically, that's of course very famous, and sometimes from minerals also. This is printed cotton. These are absolute works of art from the Mughal period with all kinds of motifs. Now, brief mention of cosmetics, and then I will close with one or two last curiosities, which will not take more than a couple of minutes. This is about Brihat Samhita of Varahamihira, where he defines 16 fundamental scents of perfumes. Of course, they can be used pure, but then he creates a whole, what is known in mathematics as a Pascal triangle, where he builds up the various combinations of 4 at a time. So you can recognize, but it's an inverted Pascal triangle, or rather it has been moved 90 degrees, but you can see how by you can keep adding, you can keep adding the number and you build the triangle. These are all the various combinations of, and he gets, at the end, he gets 1,820 possible combinations of 4 scents mixed together. And, whether they experimented all of them, we don't know. But this is a kind of intellectual exercise for cosmetics. Weather prediction is another technology. I don't know if we can call it a technology or an art, but it has existed in many parts of India. Even today, there are traditional weather prediction methods. And again, Varahamihira talks about it, but his method is basically based on the types of clouds and the shapes of clouds. But there are traditional panchangas which make yearly predictions for weather, and of course they are based mostly on astrology, as you would know. But in the overall, you find that if you look at the figures, these are 1, 2, 3 panchangas, and these are incorrect predictions, under prediction, over prediction, fully correct, and pooled. And even the fully correct predictions, you find during summer 88% correct, during the rainy season less, 50%, winter 88, 74 yearly overall fully correct prediction. That's not too bad. This is a scientific assessment, one of the rare studies we have. And another one gives 78% fully correct, 74%. Of course, the author of this paper does not give us the fully correct prediction of the Indian Meteorological Department during the same years to compare. That would have been very interesting. And I'm not sure whether the figures would have been much higher. We don't know. So finally, these funny kind of technologies which develop in India and are rarely spoken of, like ice making. How do you make ice when you don't have a fridge? And when you don't have sub-zero temperatures? Well, you make ice. This is based on the testimony of a French traveler, Le Jus de Flay, in the 18th century, who explains how Mughals had ice houses, ice rooms, and they were storing ice the year round. They were very fond of adding ice in drinks and using ice for various purposes. So you dig a pit 6 to 7 feet deep, and the mud you extract, you put it on the side, you raise the sides so that the wind will not interfere. You fill it with straw. I don't understand really what the role of straw is, but apparently it's very important. Dry snow, maybe it is dew, maybe it is there to absorb some of the dampness that is going to form in the process. And you fill it 4 to 5 feet high. And then you place new terracotta plates, which are 3 to 4 inches deep. So they are actually shallow. And you put your water in the evening, and you find that ice forms 2 to 3 hours later. Why is that? Because the clay plates are new, and therefore there's a high porosity. And you know the Kuja effect. You know, when you want, traditionally, how did you cool water in houses? You would keep a pot, and you would allow water to seep through it, and even sometimes you would wrap it in a cloth to even suck more of the water. And this evaporation which takes place cools the water inside the pot. So this is a traditional method, but here apparently this results. It is done only in November. Of course, you can't do it in midsummer. It is done like today's kind of weather, and they find that in a few hours ice is produced. They will break the plates, and they will actually use a little warm water to melt the ice blocks together, and they will stock it in those ice rooms, which must be, of course, thermally insulated. I don't have data on that, but they would store it for the rest of the year. So this is something very interesting, and which, of course, we have completely lost. So my conclusions, that in many fields we have seen iron, we have seen steel, we have seen the paper industry and a few others. India perfected advanced technology centuries before Europe. For example, the zinc extraction, typically, Europe had it many centuries, about 500 years later. So that is a fact. Some remain useful today: Ayurveda, organic agriculture, metallurgical techniques, water management and irrigation, textile, crafts, etc. But my point here is that these are all parts of Indian knowledge systems, and we should be, a little bolder in doing scientific estimation, assessments of those traditional knowledge systems, the way Professor Balasubramanian here was doing, for the restless iron. But our scientists are a little bit shy of going into such fields. I don't know whether a chemical scientist today how he would feel publishing a paper on alchemical practices in medieval India. This is one, but actually in the West, they very often investigate those things, and it is quite a valid, it's part, after all, of the history of science and technology and understanding the evolution of those techniques.